All right, so you might think that it is pretty petty of me to include this picture up of Anthony Mackie when he was starring in that Black Mirror episode called Striking Vipers, right? But the reason I'm putting this up is because if he's saying that, I don't know who this mysterious they are, but like he's saying they are destroying masculinity, then if they are destroying traditional masculinity, then he certainly is helping. like at least with this specific show that he did, or whatever episode that he did. So yeah, in this video, we're gonna talk about why people keep saying that masculinity is dead, masculinity is under attack when it's clearly still alive. Like, all right, y'all. So this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter. Remember, the links to everything I will be talking about, all the articles or whatever, will be in my description box as usual. So Anthony Mackie shares how he's raising his sons amid the death of the American male. And I'm just like, oh brother, at least he waited until the movie came out to say this stuff. All right, listen. Anthony Mackie may have ascended to a new level of movie stardom with his latest film, Captain America: Brave New World, but parenting is still his biggest priority. During a recent appearance on The Pivot, Mackie opened up about raising his kids. "I keep my boys humble. Like, my boys have never had a pair of Jordans. My boys don't do all that internet fly stuff," he said. "I could be the biggest star in the world. Do not let me catch you being stupid," he continued. "My oldest gets it. My 15-year-old, he tells the other ones, he's like, yo, don't make dad mad. Once you get one that's right, he's gonna straighten the other ones out." And so Mackie shares 4 sons with his ex-wife. So here's where he says, "So it is just that thing of, in the past 20 years, we've been living through the death of the American male. They have literally killed masculinity in our homes, in our communities, for one reason or another. But I raised my boys to be young men. And however you feel about that, you feel about that." And so I find this entire concept so interesting because it sounds like when white people say, oh, well, they're attacking the white race, when diversity initiatives are put in place, right? Like it just that's how it sounds, like, oh, they're attacking masculinity. And so I really think, part of the reason why this is so interesting to me is because masculinity is clearly alive and well. Like, the most disgusting parts of toxic masculinity is it's celebrated. Patriarchy is still destroying and pillaging just as it has been for generations. Men still rule the world and they decide what masculinity / toxic masculinity is or isn't, and they enforce it upon themselves and other men. They enforce it upon the world to the point of destruction, to the point of self-destruction. So when Anthony Mackie says masculinity is dead, I'm wondering what he means, right? When people think of when people typically think of masculinity, like the stereotypically good, quote unquote, good parts of it, they think about the chivalrous stuff. Like, they think about humility, responsibility, duty, protection, all of that, right? So is Anthony Mackie saying that that is dead? I think those things are still valued or exalted in society. Or is he mad, like other people are? Is he mad that people have the nerve to critique the toxic parts of toxic masculinity? And I think the only reason someone would be mad about something like that is because they don't see the toxic elements of toxic masculinity as toxic in the first place. They don't see them as toxic. So when people are critiquing the toxic nature of some of these performances of masculinity and what it does to even the men that are performing it, it's all of a sudden people think that's an attack on masculinity as a whole, instead of just a critique on the idiotic and self-destructive things that are done when these men sacrifice everything to perform toxic masculinity. Because sometimes a lot of these men, like men who think, in my experience, men who think like Anthony Mackie, some of them do not respond well when we say things like, oh, it's okay for you as a boy or a man to like bright colors. It's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to show emotion. It's okay to do ballet. It's okay for you to do gymnastics. Like, it's okay for you to talk about your feelings. I feel like a lot of them start bucking up like, oh, so you're trying to turn us all into sissies. Like, I feel like that's what a lot of men think when you critique the really bad parts, the toxic parts of toxic masculinity. They're like, oh, so you stripping away, because their whole being, their whole entire esteem is built, some of them is built on these archaic, very hurtful to themselves too, hurtful types of masculinity. And so when you start poking at that, when you start saying, hey, you're doing this just because your father said that to do it, and his father said to do it before, and none of y'all, and his father said to do it before them, and none of y'all stop to think about why you're doing it, like how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your emotions, you're just doing it because this is what we do as men. And we're not stopping to think about, okay, well, how is this affecting me? You know what I mean? I think when we start poking at these traditional things that have been in place for how many hundreds of years, and, you know, people who have attached their whole identity to that are just going to be like, oh my gosh, no, don't touch anything. I don't care if it's toxic or anything. This is what it means to be a man. And it's just like, that's such a place of stagnance. So yeah, the article goes on and says Mackie told his sons since they were 2 years old that they need to always say thank you, open doors for women, and take care of their mom. He said, every time I left for a job, I tell my 15-year-old, you're the man of the house. You make sure these doors are locked. Every night this alarm is on. You text me or you call me every night before you go to bed and you wake up. I love that because we're men. And Mackie believes all the money and celebrity in the world means nothing if he's not there to protect his family. So for me, it's always that idea of American masculinity is very different. So yeah, he said every time he left for work, he'd tell a 15-year-old child that he's the man of the house. And like, you know, he says we're men. If someone climbs through a window, basically, you can have all the money in the world. Someone climbs through a window on you and it means nothing. And like, it means nothing if you can't protect yourself. And I'm just like, yes, we should all be learning how to protect ourselves. But you do it because you're a human being, not just because you're like, I'm a man. Like, I just think these definitions, some of these versions of masculinity creates unrealistic standards and expectations, especially for a child who is 15. Like, y'all love to say that, oh, well, you the man of the house, and a 15-year-old is gonna, you see what I'm saying? 10-year-old, y'all be saying that stuff too. And I'm like, I don't know if we do we understand what we're saying when we're saying this to black children who already are seen as grown adults sometimes, 10-year-olds as grown adults, and especially in the justice system in this country. You see what I'm saying? So it's just, I don't know. I think that some of these expectations, some of these things need to just be, okay, well, if we're protecting ourselves because we're human beings, then we need to protect ourselves, not because, you know, I have certain equipment in my pants and that dictates whether or not I'm learning. It just the whole philosophy around it, I think, is just not, at the very least, it's unhelpful. Like, in the long run, like, obviously teaching your kids to be respectful is one thing, but these conversations, these standards, these unrealistic standards when it comes to like boys and men, I think we really need to talk about it. They grow up to be these people who think they should ignore their desires and emotions, trying to fit a rubric that is honestly dehumanizing. And I think that's why a lot of men are bitter and violent and repressed. But yeah, I'm sure many queer, like, black people have experienced growing up with a parent who was like this. I remember my father talking about, like, when I was young, my father was talking at church. Like, we was at church somewhere. Oh my gosh, I got like my skin crawls thinking about church. But it was like outside of church, you know how them parents talk, and they would never leave the parking lot, right? So he was talking about, he said that the only time he hugged his own father was at like the airport or something when they were leaving or something. Then he proceeds to, and he's talking about this experience to other men at the church, and they kiki and they laughing and sharing their own experiences, right? And he proceeds to tell his buddies, these men at church, that you got to be careful with that stuff, like hugging your sons and stuff. This is my father. I'm hearing as a kid, like, I'm watching him, like, I sat there and watched these grown men, like they're laughing and kikiing about not being emotionally open, not being close, and like kind of ridiculing it as like a womanly thing almost, like, you know what I mean? But they're when I stripped it bare as a kid, I was just like, oh wow, they're laughing about not being able to literally hug their own flesh and blood. Like they literally bragging on that. And so, like, a lot of these men are terrified of closeness. They are emotionally inept. They run their homes like slave masters. They beat their kids like slave masters, beat their ancestors. You see what I'm saying? Some of them run their homes like drill sergeants because they are absolutely terrified of true emotional closeness. They're terrified of what is behind this, you know, manly man mask. They don't want to go behind it. And I'm just like, girl, you know, when we point out that some of these things in these toxic performances of masculinity is affecting y'all, when we point it out, all of a sudden, and affecting the whole world, when we point it out, all of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, you're killing masculinity. It's just like, no, girl, the performance of toxic masculinity is killing y'all. Like, y'all are depressed and lonely. So this attempt and a lot of times it comes from an attempt to stomp out femininity and queerness in your kids. And when y'all do that, the only thing that y'all create is DL men. That's the only thing y'all create is DL men. When you it doesn't, like, that's why you should, straight or gay or whatever, like, you should make sure that your kid knows to be themselves, period, so that they're not repressing themselves. And y'all mad at the existence of DL men, but you have, you know, parents who raise their kids in these, you better be a man way. And so of course the kid is going to perform toxic masculinity for your weird homophobic self as a parent until they get out your house and can do what they want to do. It's just so strange to watch these kinds of mentalities flourish and be exalted, right? Like, they praise Anthony, but then everybody's surprised when men are so repressed. Everybody's surprised when they so depressed and don't feel like they can talk to nobody. Everybody's surprised that DL men exist, and that, I mean, they're even straight guys, straight men who are interested in things and don't do them because of the certain standards and manly man standards. You have to be a man. So it's just, I think it hurts everybody. It hurts everybody. And us pointing that out is not attacking. It's just saying, hey, we seeing y'all take an axe to your own self-esteem, and we're saying, you know, you might want to stop. That's it. And so, like, no one has all the answers, but I'm saying the answer is definitely not in traditional, toxic, hurtful, masculine, that even hurts the people who are performing it. So let me know what y'all thought about this. Love y'all so much. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you have a good evening.
This ain't the only pussy holy, worship me, yeah, you can blow me. I ain't the only, you so lonely, insecure, they don't control me. I ain't the only pussy holy, worship me, yeah,